Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Anyone know about any creepy stories or stuff from Mexico?
Laredo is unironically the hell. Like a gate or something, the whole border is cursed. The worst of the worst happens there, and also I experienced the backrooms in Mexico City. Sadly, those idiots on Plebit think that the backrooms is an internet creepypasta or a game. Screw them.
Nah, Juarez is way more messed up than Nuevo Laredo. I live in Juarez. I've seen the people who kill girls in my dreams. They're in a van, laughing diabolically and throwing girls' bodies in the desert. I also saw an old woman, like a gypsy, walking down my street at 3 a.m. cursing out loud. She was wearing layers of dirty clothes and appeared to have Rasta-like hair. I've dreamed cows eating murdered people, bloody corpses. I met an American guy at a bar. He was the owner of a site called Ladies of Juarez. It's a network where Americans take bus tours to these border towns to meet cheap prostitutes. I recognized him because I had seen the website before and he was wearing a shirt that just said the name of the site. I approached him to ask him about the site and stuff. Really tall guy, he was the main pimp at the bar. He was very courteous and open about it. I think he was the devil. I've been at cocaine-filled parties full of cartel members. The atmosphere at these events was always evil. I've been around town a lot. I used to drive for Uber. And convinced Juarez is where the devil lives. The most horrific, poverty-ridden slums where girls are found on ditches have a wicked aura. People are dirty, dumb, ugly, but they're so careless that I sometimes envy them. They are always involved in stupid shit and drama. In those really poor parts of town there's a lot of churches. Not pretty churches, evangelical abominations of 1,000 denominations. I've always wondered, why is there a correlation between poverty and the churches? I've heard stories of the richest men in town. Crooked businessmen who made their initial money smuggling drugs and weapons, then later legitimized their empire to the point of owning the natural gas distribution in all Latin America. I have many, many more stories. Some of them told to me by people and some others I've experienced personally. I worked at a huge butcher shop as a cashier. Many of the girls who worked always told me creepy stories. They were poor girls, so they were messed up. One of them always had little dirt cubes and she'd eat them like candy. She said she loved the taste of dirt. She would tell me about the time Big Bird from Sesame Street appeared in her room in the middle of the night. Like, actual size Big Bird just standing there with his creepy-ass smile. Another time someone knocked on her door. She answered and there was a horse, just there. Nobody else but the horse. Someday I will write a book about my life in Juarez. This is a place said to be so evil not even Satan would live here. I disagree. I believe, like some other Anon said about Laredo, that this and the other border cities are portals to hell. A nexus of pestilence. Evil. The desert is a mysterious place. One of my friends from Sunday school had his little sister murdered by her uncle. They lived with their grandmother a few blocks from my house. I don't know what happened with their parents, but the grandma was the tutor. While some cursed day, one of the grandma's sons, guy in his 50s, tortured and killed a girl. They found her on some plot of dirty land. She was 7 years old. Her picture was on TJE newspaper, and the description of the state of her body was gruesome. Her nipples had been cut off. Police later found out and arrested the uncle. We never talked about it, but everyone knew. I remember the grandma, super religious lady. My friend got into drugs for many years and I lost track of him. Until a couple of months ago. He turned around his life. He's an electrician now and does pretty good. Happy about how that turned out. Bless him. I remember very vividly the time my dad picked up the newspaper. They delivered it home every morning. He didn't bring it inside. He just threw it in the trash, but I caught him through my room's window. I picked up the paper later. The headline was about a woman who killed and chopped up her husband and kids. She was a medicine student. The case haunted me for years. They had pictures of the inside of the house in that paper. They didn't live far from our home. No one could understand why a seemingly happy and normal woman would do that to their own family. She butchered them and threw them in trash bags. I understand why my dad would try to hide that from me. Bless his soul. I also remember when girls started appearing murdered around town. I was in elementary school. It was surreal. There was panic in all of Juarez. I knew then that life would never be the same. We all knew, that screwed up things happened here. You would hear on the news or the papers about murders from the drug trade. They were always found on the trunk of a car wrapped in those typical Mexican blankets. But even back then there was some sort of code. You wouldn't see the things that happen nowadays. All respect was lost. Mexico lost fear and respect of God. Anyway, back to the girls. The redaction of the main newspaper in town started receiving anonymous handwritten letters from the supposed serial killer of girls. He signed the letters, Richie. The panic got worse. Now everyone was talking about Richie. Kids made jokes at school, Richie's gonna come for you. We never found out if it was a hoax, but the reality is that girls kept popping out. Many theories started to brew: American serial killers on the loose, satanic sacrifice, cartel members having fun, factory bus drivers who'd like to kill them. I believe it's a little of all. I say it's because it's still happening. Like the case of my friend's sister, many people took advantage of the situation. But like I saw in my dreams, it was a gang cruising the city in a white van. I believe they were cartel related, but an offshoot of it, like a rogue gang. There were women in it too. I don't know if there was a ritual element to it, but the cruelty and evil makes me believe so. All of the girls were poor, had long dark hair. Most of them brown skin. All of them tortured and abused. The city never recovered. It will always be known as the City of Death Women. It's a cursed place.
I work in a crime lab, and I remember reading a few years back a government report on the city of Juarez. Over a period of decades, the deaths of these hundred of Juarez women were investigated by a number of American law enforcement agencies. The FBI and the CIA working cooperatively. Originally, it was assumed that the deaths were linked to organized crime of some sort, perhaps human trafficking, drug cartels, or local businesses trying to prevent these woman factory workers from forming labor unions, or serial murderers. The conclusion of the report was much more frightening. In the end, it was decided that the conditions of the Juarez slums had led to a culture where murdering slum women was perfectly socially acceptable. There was no vast conspiracy, no organized effort to commit mass murder. Each of these women was killed by a friend or relative or neighbor, usually over some slight transgression. Almost every murder was committed by a separate individual. In cases where a dozen or more women were killed at the same time and buried in mass graves, it was found that a gang of a dozen or more men from their neighborhood spontaneously rounded them up and killed them, usually on a whim. Most of the men in the community were very angry about the lack of paid work and having to rely on support from their wives and daughters who worked in Juarez factories and sweatshops. There was a strong belief in the slums that women should not leave the home or hold jobs. So, men would hunt down the female factory workers like deer and butcher them as punishment for overstepping their roles as homemakers. The truly tragic thing is that these women didn't have much of a choice. The factories refused to hire men because they could pay the female workers less money. And often these women provided the only income for their families. The choice was to get a factory job or starve.
I'm not Mexican, but my dad is. He's one of those old classical conservative type of dude that if you bring up ghost stories he will want to ignore because he just doesn't believe in things like that. Anyway, one story he does believe in and stands by is the creepiest story I heard. This happened to him when he was a kid around 11 years old. He's the oldest of 8 in the state of Guerrero, Mexico. One day my dad wakes up in the middle of the night in his single one-room house in Mexico. My dad was renovating the roof, so at the moment of this story the one-room house only had a nylon tarp for cover. Because of this, you basically hear everything that's happening in your yard/outside your house. Anyway, my dad wakes up because he hears something messing with the outdoor water receptacle called a pila. This is where poorer Mexican families do their dishes and laundry. So my dad gets up, moves the curtain separating the inside of the house with the outdoor kitchen, and sees a tall black bird with its back facing my dad right on the edge of the pila. What it was doing my dad describes as basically grabbing a cup with one hand, filling it with water, raising the filled cup, and tilting it downwards so that the water from the cup pours into an empty cup in the hand below. My dad says as soon as he saw this giant birdman thing do this he ran to his parents' room, which was just a curtained section, woke up his dad, and told him something was in the kitchen. Oh gee grandpa, KN paused askance, along with my grandma, who I have recently asked to confirm this story and it is confirmed real, grabs the shotgun immediately and runs to the kitchen and sees the bird doing its thing. By the time grandpa takes aim the bird flapped away and was never seen again by my dad. Nobody knows what this is, but I have my speculation that this experience might have been residuals from what the life my grandpa had before he had my dad. In Juarez there's a legend about death appearing to people at a gas station. My mom didn't know about this legend, and was getting a bus by the gas station. It was taking a long time, hours, and she was alone with some random lady who came up to her and started making small talk. My mom tried asking her what she did for a living, and offered to get her something when she made a quick run to the gas station. And got really weird answers. I don't sleep, I don't eat. Eventually the bus to the US arrived and she got on with the lady. Somehow she just up and vanished during the trip. My mom even tried asking for her at the bus stop and nobody knew who she was talking about. She had a very distinctive suitcase and nobody remembered seeing anyone with that design of suitcase on the bus. When she told her friend from Juarez about it, she broke out crying, and explained the stories to my mom. My mom is a believer and this isn't the first experience she's had with the supernatural. Death scoped my mom out. I don't remember exactly what she said, but she did make some comments about my mom as a person too. Some pretty insightful shit.
I live in Juarez too. Lots of people get robbed just after leaving banks, for example. Rumor is that some bank workers are in on it and they call their friend if you withdraw a significant amount of money. I myself have never been robbed. I keep all my money in El Paso anyway. Other than that, don't buy a car that is too nice or wear expensive clothing/accessories. Also, I've left the front porch to accumulate trash and stuff. Don't know if it works, but again, I've never been robbed. Other things to do are relatively common sense. Don't talk too much or about things that may draw attention while in public. Avoid known conflict places.
I have lived my entire life in Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, Mexico, and have experienced firsthand the violence, death, and destruction that consumes this city. Last night I was driving back from a friend's house when I saw 4 corpses in the middle of the road covered in blood and gore. It wasn't the first time and it won't be the last. And I can honestly say that I didn't feel anything other than frustration at the traffic. I know of at least 10 people who have been kidnapped and whose family have had to pay the ransom. Of my friends, 5 of them have had their dad killed in various situations, some innocent and some not. My classmate was brutally gunned down not 5 months ago while riding down one of the busiest streets in the city. A lot of businesses have closed their doors or are headed in that direction as random gang members demand money for protection. But worst of all, worse than all of this, is that what most people fear most isn't the crime or the drug war or the cartels. It's the police. The federal police roam the city day and night, and really they're just big, menacing thugs who have their own intentions and absolutely don't care about the people.
Around 4 years ago my family and I took a trip to visit relatives in Michoacán in Mexico. Anyone who is acutely aware of international news knows that Mexico has become a bloody battleground between drug cartels and government forces. Anyways, the trip went well, and we were at the airport in Juarez waiting for our connecting flight. My parents let my sister and I wander around the airport, since our flight wouldn't be ready for a couple of hours. I took my sister with me to find some grub and maybe grab a magazine or something. Inside a small shop we looked at bags of chips and candy, but I got a horrible feeling of being watched. A thin man was looking at my sister and I. He had his hair slicked back, wore a thin white shirt and very tight green pants. He looked very androgynous and vaguely like a transvestite. I grabbed my sister by the hand and walked away. As we went towards the escalator and went into a crowd of people, I grabbed my sister very tight, but then I heard her yelp. The man had grabbed her arm and was trying to pull her away and disappear into the crowd. I swung at him and yelled for help. A security officer came and was able to apprehend him and he tried to escape. I told them what happened and explained how he had tried to abduct my sister. By that time my parents were with us. The thin man was handcuffed standing in front of us. He didn't say a thing, all he did was smile with his nasty yellow teeth. We didn't leave my parents' side after that. Looking back now I realize how grave that situation could have been. Femicide had and still is running rampant in Juarez. The women are sometimes sold as sex slaves or sacrificed by some satanic sects of cartels. My sister could have been just another number. Another girl lost. To this day I can't forget the thin man and how he tried to take an 8-year-old girl.
Juan de Carno, I am also from Juarez. Back in 2005, when violence was not as bad as now, I got a gun lodged in my neck after I got to my car exiting a famous restaurant, Alitas, Torres. I got dragged out of my vehicle, beaten to an inch of my life, and the guy took my vehicle and traumatized me. I since left that bewildering little city. The city where all of my childhood was in 2005. I have not been back. I am sorry for you to be still there. I wish we could kill all those narco and bastards that have destroyed that city and country. But Mexico as a whole did not want to stop this, since never so it deserves to burn, in my opinion. Some of us strive to become better people and better citizens. We bring jobs to Mexico and they tax us, assault us, and make our lives terrible. I decided to leave my city and never come back. I hate Juarez. And worse, I hate the people living there for the last 40 years. It's their fault it has become what it is. I hate the maquiladoras. Although they bring the hope of jobs, they are pure bullshit and corruption. Just like the documentary Roger and Me, Juarez will become this.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.